We have Jacob Garza on the call here today. Jacob, I really appreciate your time. And I'm just going to direct everybody to your website because you got really a fleshed out website. There's a lot of content there. So head over to REEP, REEP equity.com. I'll make sure to have that link in the show notes. But Jacob, we're going to spend a little time with multifamily and probably a little property management here today.
Well, Jack, thank you for having me on. I certainly appreciate it. And you're right. We're going to dive right into multifamily investing and property management because we do both at our group.
Yeah, so that's one of the big interesting things. I'm probably just going to dive right into that. And I know that we're kind of pressed for time here today, so we're gonna kind of forego like how you got into real estate investing and some of the background, because frankly, I think you probably have shared that story a million times over. But you really have a integration here regarding your acquisition, and you're dealing with multifamily and you're doing property management, everything. So I find that a really interesting approach. What made you decide to integrate all of your businesses like that?
Yeah, so 10 years ago when we first started, I'm kind of a little geek when it comes to learning new things. And my previous background, I had some software companies out of Dallas. So we moved to San Antonio in 2007, bought our first property in 2012, so it's been 10 years. And before I handed it off to a third party, I really wanted to understand, how revenue was generated, how to control expenses, and just kind of get to know what I like to call the ultimate end user experience. In other words, who pays you the money? You look at any kind of product that's out there, whether it's Starbucks, Apple, all the big guys or gals, they really understand their customers. So that's what led us to start our own management company and just get granular with what's out there. So that's why we did it.
So you really focus on that tailored experience with your residents. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. And if your users have to go at this point, the one thing I want them to know is if you take care of your tenants, they will pay the gardening, the landscaping, they'll pay the make readies, and they'll pay the mortgage. And I know that's oversimplified and it's said a lot, but that's the absolute truth. If you focus on them and make sure that they have a home and be responsive. And when you talk about how do you capitalize a project, where I think a lot of entrepreneurs or inexperienced syndicators come in, they don't capitalize their projects well enough. And it just goes downhill very quickly when you get behind on a property. But I mean, if you do that, Jack, you're going to have a property that's just going to be above the rest that's out there. And if things start to tighten up, you may go from 8 to 12% return down to 5 to 7, but you're not going to lose your shirt. And when the economy comes back, in all economy cycle, you'll be standing proud and tall and so on the rest of your assets.
So when you say, that user experience, I hate, I'm kind of surprised that I'm focused so much on this aspect of it, but you really have a good point. You even brought up Apple, for example. They're able to charge a premium for their devices typically because of the experience people receive there. Is that kind of in a nutshell what you're suggesting?
Absolutely. And the experience starts with on the move in. I can't tell you how many times people move in and it's the small things that matter. And if you want to drive your resident experience, you have to train your people. And make ready guys don't make $12 an hour. Okay. They just don't. They're craftsmen, a lot of them. And I know it sounds impossible, but when they're fixing things and painting details and touch up paint, it's the attitudes that matter. And if you pay these people well enough, your payroll's not $1,200 a door anymore. And that's just out the window. It's much higher than that. You will see an amazing transformation on your resident retention and how people talk about your property and bring in their cousins and their uncles, and that's who you want. You really want a community that's there, and that's where it starts and just continues to manifest. So the experience goes much more than just the move-ins and I'm so happy and maintenance. That's another one. People stay for maintenance. They'll lease for the leasing agent, but they're going to stay if they've got good maintenance.
So, one of the aspects that you specialize in is when you purchase a property, you're looking for properties that you can do that value add. I understand that part of your business, but what you're suggesting here today is that user experience is the biggest value add that you.
Absolutely. It's a huge component. I mean, you have to go in and do the big stuff if it's a big capital project, right? New paint, let's say, new playground, transform the amenities, if you would, go in and put a playground. So those big value adds are they're easy to do. It's not hard to mess up a paint job. But when you go in and address the make readies for the first time, a lot of times it's done by an outside company and they're pretty professional and know what to do. But when you start turning your rent roll, it's your maintenance staff and your make ready staff that really starts to have a huge impact on that user experience. And it's also the people on the inside the office and how they interact with the staff and any kind of notices to give to the staff and after hours events. That's really big too. That really helps create the whole experience of these users.
Sure. So with all of that being said, let's give our listeners a couple action items. What are some of those low-hanging fruits that you've found that make a huge difference for the experience for your resident?
Yeah, the first one is just get your residents, get the inside staff and your maintenance people to just engage in the residents. And if they say they're going to do something, they have to do it. I mean, it's just, you have to be extremely responsive. That's the first thing they're going to notice. When we take over properties, a lot of times the staff members just aren't engaged. Now, I don't know if they don't care, or I'm not going to say they don't care. I'm not going to say maybe they're not trained well. Maybe their level of expectation isn't there. But to me, that's the biggest thing you can do is have your teams empowered to make these decisions. They have to have a budget to go fix stuff. You can't micromanage them. So that's the first thing. Someone who's listening, that they can make a huge difference in their residents' attitude towards the property.
Yeah, I find it interesting when you say that and point it out. It sounds so obvious, but it actually is quite common, isn't it? That under promise or over promise, under deliver in a lot of aspects, especially when you're probably taking over some of these multifamilies.
Yeah, and you'll be able to tell pretty quickly when you take over a property, and it all boils down to the culture. And if they're not given a budget, and if they're being micromanaged, you're just not going to build a company that is accountable. You're going to build one that manages by fear or other type of motives. It's just not healthy for the culture. There's no recognition, and that just tends to domino downhill. And unfortunately, I see it. It happens in our business, despite the fact I think we have one of the nicer, more professional businesses that out there, and certainly one that gives opportunity for anyone in property management that can be a porter one day and they can make it all the way up to Lincoln or Camden, which they're documented success stories like that. So it's a great business, and it's very rewarding. And it's a feel-good business when you're able to take over a property and come back even 30 days later, 6 months later, and just see the residents, how happy they are. And everything just kind of takes over itself at that point.
Right. So you mentioned early in this conversation that it even boils down to their move-in experience. What are you doing differently there that people should take note?
First thing that needs to happen is the property manager, the maintenance, have to be attuned of people who aren't living in the residence. We all have skips, and that's the thing. That's another thing. If they're not engaged, you don't have an apartment unit that just goes south on you, and the refrigerator stinks and just roach infested, and it just creates all kinds of problems. So first thing I'm going to do is identify these units and trash them out quickly. Or if a move out happens, it's inspected within 24 hours, and the checklist and parts are ordered, and that property is just get back online. These properties, the units, I like to say, they die after about 8 months. You just have this awful feeling inside of a unit that's not being cared for, not being loved. No one's living in it. Mm-hmm. And they will. and they'll just take on a whole different feel. And that affects other residents. So that's the first thing is get these vacant units made ready again. One of the things I like to look for is vacant, not made ready. And again, that's 10 days max. I mean, these units need to be turned and need to be made ready, and they need to be have someone living habitable in them.
Sure. So that's a big key thing there is and it's kind of understandable. Like some properties or some owners, they when a resident moves out, for some situations that expenditure can be pretty large.
No question. And unit inspections are very important. I mean, when you go in and do the filter change or courtesy battery, smoke battery changes, the maintenance team or the eyes and the ears, and that's something. When my wife and I started this business 10 years ago, we realized the staff is super important. And Jack, 5 years ago, you could buy a property and go to sleep for 2 years, wake up and sell it for, almost, half of what it was worth when you bought it, or double, I should say. And as prices have continued to skyrocket, cap rates are suppressed considerably. It's about the management company. It's the decade of the management company. You have to be a solid operator to cash flow these properties, and it's very competitive to hire staff on properties. So you have an advantage when you have build a culture and you have owners that care, and like I said, well capitalized properties. That's a big one. It can make a real difference.
Yeah. So what tools do you use or leverage then in order for your boots on the ground to be able to communicate what's going on with the individual units so that you can take whatever action that needs to happen?
Well, I wish I could take credit for this, but when we got to about, 300 units, my wife and I were basically regional managers at that point. We really couldn't grow our syndication side, our buying side. So we actually went third party till we got about 1,000 units. And that's when you can have enough scale to hire staff. So that's kind of lesson number 2. You want to start your own management company. It's probably easier to start it at 1,000 to 1,500 units, because you've got the fees to hire the accounting, to hire the HR, hire someone higher than a regional manager, a director level, because at that point you're probably going to have 6 or 8 properties. But now our property is run by someone with 15, 16 years in the business. We're at 3,000 units now. We have 7 in Houston and 6 here in San Antonio. And she does a fantastic job of marshaling our troops and making sure the docs all get connected, if you would, from what our vision is as buyers to the business plan over here as operators. And that just really makes a tight, nice, good circle up into disposition till we sell it.
Yeah, I noticed that you have all of your properties in Texas there. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, a couple of things. First and foremost, Texas is just a great place for jobs. It's very business friendly. We have job growth. The current jobs that are here are continuing to grow. And when you have that, people move here. And that continues to have a lot of demand. If you have a lot of demand and little supply, you're going to make more money on your properties. And we're operators first and foremost. Then we're investors, and that sounds backwards. The fiduciary is the investor. I get that, but to get the investor the returns, it is the operator. That's my take. So I think I forgot the question here. Where I was kind of rambled here.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering why you focus so heavily on Texas. But
yeah, so that's the economic fundamentals of investments are here. Okay. Mm-hmm. The second one is I think the mistake some people make is they'll go out and buy a property in Atlanta, which is nothing wrong with that. It's another state like we have. Tennessee, another great state. Arizona, Phoenix. That's a great place. Also, Florida, parts of Florida, and they don't build any scale. To get to know the market in Tennessee and buy one property, and then to go off and buy one in Atlanta and buy one in Orlando, for example. You're trying to figure out three different markets and three different broker groups or three different, it just takes a while. And business is business 101 to me. If you can focus on a particular market and get some scale, you're going to get the deals that come to you. The broker's going to call you and says, my seller just asked me to pick the top 5 buyers. And you know what? You're number 5. And they're probably comparing you to people who've been in there 20, 30 years. But you bought 3 properties here. They're recent. I've known you. People know you. They say you do what you do. And so you can get to 5 and 6 and 8 and 12 properties pretty quickly. So that's why we focus here in San Antonio first. We've gone full cycle on 5 properties and 8 properties. So it just made sense for us to build our portfolio here in San Antonio. Then we went to Houston 3 years ago. And now we're starting to build a lot of scale there and here. We're still in San Antonio quite a bit. So that's why we do it.
No, I think that's especially important. I hear a lot of people talking about, doing exactly what you suggested earlier. They're buying properties throughout the country. And then I'm sure you've kind of sidestepped some of those pain points. I mean, in this aspect, because understanding your one market is very important, especially when you're talking about 3,000 units. Before we move into the next topic that I'm going to hit you up on, I wanted to remind everybody to find your website again, which is reepequity.com. I'll make sure to have that link in the show notes, but you make sure to put REEP equity.com when you do that search. So another thing that I think is interesting is that you mentioned 1,000 units, 1,500 units for you to start your own property management business. But to be frank, and I'm going to be pretty blunt about this, for the most part, every time I've had a third-party management company handling any of my rental properties, it seems like there's a bit of a confrontation that occurs. Our interests aren't aligned usually, and I would think that would be a big benefit of what you're talking about.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point, and you have to have your business philosophy, your business goals aligned. Your the word escapes me here, but they're intangibles, right? They have nothing to do about the track record. They have everything to do with how culture, how they communicate with people, how they treat other people, and you'll find that out, over lunch with the right property management company, and that is absolutely the case. Is to get someone who thinks like you, has the same values as you, the core values, and that's sometimes hard to find.
How important is it when you were talking about your business values and a few other things? Did you find it important to write those things down, make sure that it's easily communicated, or is it something that you've just kind of baked into everybody that works there?
No, we have those values, and they're part of our culture, and they're extremely important. And this is the momentum side as well too. We're probably 110 employees now when you consider the people at our equity group, the people at our corporate office for their property management, and then all the site teams. And the president of REEP Management, that's our management company, she's done a very good job of creating a culture on the site and at our corporate office that lends very, very well to attracting people, if you would, without even asking them. Birds of a feather flock together. It's the truth. And now we're starting to get to a point where people can feel in an interview if they think we're silly or we think we're too serious or, nah, it's not for me. They're going to watch me too much. Or the flip side, which is, wow, I really want to work here. I've heard about REEP. I've known Kevin for a while. I've known Jill for a while, and I really want to come to work for you guys. And those people you could just shows right up in an interview. And then it becomes just, can they do it? Well, most likely, yeah. The answer is, heck, you can do the job. The hard part is just finding the right person with the right culture.
Right. I was going to talk about, you've talked about you've accumulated 3,000 units now over 10 years. You're probably doing this now through syndication. And based on what people have been hearing here today is the best place to learn about what you do regarding your syndications is through your website as well?
Well, there's a couple things to that. But you're right. We bought a 24 unit, a 28 unit, an 88 unit, and 150 unit. My wife and I did it all by ourselves. And then we realized, at some point you need to syndicate if you're going to grow, because you're going to run out of money. Okay, if you have $50 million. And right now we've raised $98 million of our money and other people's money. And that's to buy. We have $400 million in assets now, if you add them up, what they're worth. So, and what was your question again, Jack? I'm rambling.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering about your syndication, and if people would like to get involved in some way, how would they do so?
Okay, so they can go to our website, certainly, and they have some terms that we have in our blog, and we talk about what we do. And I think that's one thing. If I were them, I would join a mentor group. That's what we did. We joined a couple of them just to see, and then we ended up with one. I probably joined three, and they're all out there. And to me, a couple of things. I don't think there's any question. There's successful people in our business that have never joined a mentor group, and they've done very well. I've always believed that a good mentor or education group can flatten the learning curve and can help you save you from big mistakes. And everybody out there, if you've got more time and more money, you're going to go faster. But you have to hit all the rungs. You can't skip them all. So time and money help you get through them faster. But we've been in this 10 years, and I can tell you, we're much different than we were 5 years ago. We're much different than we were 2 years ago. And we really weren't that much different the first 5 years. It just takes time, but then it really the momentum really starts to kick in. So this is not a get rich quick scheme. Nothing is, but you know what? I love real estate, Jack, because it's horizontal. Everybody understands it. It's not technology that's very vertical and nobody knows what they're doing. And it's just hard to get everybody to understand your business. And it's something everybody needs, right? Everybody needs to live in a house. They need to eat and live in a house. So that I would recommend to the group, your listeners, just to find someone who has their best interests at heart and can teach them. And we've been asked, can you mentor me? Can you coach me? And that's the most flattering thing my wife and I can hear. But the reality is we're just not good teachers. And we don't, our times, we just don't have the time either. So they're best off with somebody who does it professionally and, also buys properties. And there are a lot in this space.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with you more on that. You might as well learn from somebody who's already been there. And I really appreciate your time today. There was quite a few things to unpack in today's show. And you gave quite a few great tidbits there, and I know we're kind of bumping at the top of the hour here, but before I let you go, is there a question you wished I would have asked you here today?
Let's see. Yeah, I got to have one, Jack. Well,
and if you come to a blank, that's perfectly fine as well.
Yeah, I guess I'll call it a blank today.
No, that last tidbit alone was a great addition to the show. And I can't thank you enough. I hope you'll consider coming back on the show sometime where we can kind of dive a little deeper, because I'm sure that there's a ton of unpacking we could do just around mindset, because whether you mentioned a couple times how this is a long game and this is not a get rich quick, but you and your wife have accomplished a ton in 10 years, up to 3,000 units, starting multiple businesses, being vertically aligned like you are. That there is a lot of information there that I'm sure that people could learn from.
Absolutely, Jack. I'd love to come back on and share our story. And if it can help your listeners, that would be great, because it's amazing. We're still getting help today. You just move the decimal point over. We still get help. We get mentored. We look up to people, and it's all just one big circle. So absolutely love to come back.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, again, head over to REEP equity.com. I'll make sure to have that link in the show notes, but we'll see you next time.